or lease rules in the morning.
Welcome, B-Movie fans, to this week's episode of Director's Showcase. I'm B-Movie Paul.
Phantom Dark Dave.
And this is the final week of Alfred Hitchcock Month. And what better way to end this month than with the review of what is arguably Hitchcock's most famous film, the horror mystery thriller Psycho from 1960. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen or at least know most of the famous scenes in Psycho, but this is going to be a full review of just about everything we can think of on the film. Dave, what did you think of Psycho?
Well, of course, because I love horror, I love the movie Psycho, but it doesn't rank as high on my list as probably everyone else's.
Yeah, it seems to win almost every list of Alfred Hitchcock films. But I'm pretty sure that's largely because most people have only seen Psycho or can't really think of any other Alfred Hitchcock movie. Not to say that this isn't a great film, but I don't think a lot of people know a lot about Hitchcock who make those lists.
Yeah, no kidding, and it is his most profitable film to date. It was such an eye-opening experience for audiences everywhere because in most horror movies, they didn't show what they showed in this movie. And although this movie doesn't compare to anything at today's standards, but, there's no CGI in this movie. In fact, there's chocolate syrup in this movie.
Yes, there should be, yeah.
And what kind of chocolate syrup was that?
Apparently it was, I think I remember correctly, it was a Nesquik, chocolate syrup, if I remember correctly. I know it's not Hershey. It's a lot of people seem to think. No,
you got to watch the wording.
Yeah, Hershey has the market cornered on chocolate, but they did not win this battle.
So, for me, I appreciate the movie. I really enjoy the movie. I love the music. I think out of all the scores, the main theme for Psycho is probably one of the best. Give credit where credit's due. But definitely one of the most bland openings of all the Hitchcock films. The score saves it. But I think the casting was perfect. You got Anthony Perkins, who really wasn't a huge name at the time. This kind of really kickstarted who he was. A lot of people say it kind of dogged his career because from then on he was always just Norman Bates, and that's not so bad. I know he was on the beach with Fred Astaire, big fan there. But you had Janet Leigh, and people like Janet Leigh, and to cast her as your main character. And for her not to be in the entire movie was huge.
Yeah, that was one thing that was interesting about this. It starts off like one film and then completely changes, which was basically unheard of at the time. Like, it makes you think that Marion Crane is going to be the main character. She steals this money and then she's on the run. And then it does a 180 and kills her off at the end of the first act. And it was such an unbelievable scene, switch. If I hadn't known what was about that shower scene ahead of time, I would have never seen it coming. Well, actually, to be honest, I knew that everybody knows about the shower scene where she gets murdered in the shower, and they use the chocolate syrup as blood. But I didn't know when that was going to happen. And then at the end of the first act, when that does happen, I'm like, oh wow, I guess she wasn't the main character after all, but she got top billing in this film. Like, she's on the front, her name's listed and everything. So it was something else, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's something that worked really well in Alfred Hitchcock's favor because nobody did that before. And when you take your lead character and you kill him off in the first part of the movie, less than halfway through, at that point you realize as an audience you're not safe. Like, the one person who you knew was going to make it out alive has died. This means anything can happen. And real quick note, I was looking up a lot of stuff that Janet Leigh had done. Did you know that she was in a movie called Angels in the Outfield from 1951, which means the one that we know is a remake?
I did know that. I think the original is about the Pittsburgh Pirates or something like that.
That's kind of why I brought it up. That's kind of close to home, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I only know that because everyone in Pittsburgh is like, who's with if anyone ever mentions Angels of the Outfield, they're like, the original is based off the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm like, yeah, I know because the last 10 people told me that.
Yeah, I should have seen that coming. I guess make that number 11. Now, our new main character in the movie, played by Vera Miles, she was in one of my favorite episodes of Twilight Zone, actually.
Oh, was she? Which one was that?
There's an episode called Mirror Image, where basically she goes to a subway station and she's just kind of sitting there waiting for, or it's not a subway, it's a bus station, apologize. And she's sitting there waiting for a bus and she keeps kind of like dozing off or zoning out. And the entire time she gets up and she goes to ask the clerk how long till the bus gets here. And he's like, lady, it's been like 5 minutes. You just asked me. She's like, I've never even talked to you. And so it's really cool because you kind of halfway through the episode, you realize there's like this, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a doppelganger, so to speak. It's a really cool episode.
Sounds like it.
But this isn't about Twilight Zone. This is about Psycho, so we'll get back to it. But, I also love the fact that Alfred Hitchcock does his cameo in the beginning of the movie, and that doesn't kind of interfere with the suspense of the twist of the plot of the story. You're not sitting there the whole time wondering where Alfred Hitchcock pops up. He hurries up, says, hey guys, and then he's out of the picture, and now you're back to, okay, what's really going on?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, hey, this is my movie, just so you know.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I don't know about you, but that was happening to me, not in Psycho, but when I was watching, Vertigo and North by Northwest, like, when does Hitchcock pop up? There he is.
Yeah, it's kind of like finding Stan Lee in any of the Marvel movies. Like,
exactly.
He's there somewhere.
What? Stan Lee and Alfred Hitchcock's the same guy. I don't know if you knew that.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
But, another thing that was really cool, not to take away from the film, but the novel itself, man, it was only... The novel came out in 1959, and instantly in 1960 a movie was made. That means you got a good book on your hands.
Oh, definitely. One thing about the book compared to the movie is the character Norman Bates is a lot different in the book. I mean, they're both psychos, and they both think that they're their mother at some points. But the original Norman Bates from the book, he's actually a big, fat, middle-aged, balding guy who's like very vulgar. The book opens up where he's having a daydream about some kind of ancient Aztec cannibalistic ritual or something like that, and it's like this calming thing to him, and he's like obsessed with pornography and things. So it's interesting how like they go from that kind of character, who's very, very vulgar, very obscene and disgusting, to this very charming, very young kind of guy who's very soft-spoken, very innocent-seeming. And what's interesting in that is one of the scenes in Psycho, in the first act, Marion Crane is looking through a book that Norman has, and she closes it in disgust, and you never know what it is. But if I remember correctly in the book, they blatantly say that it's like some kind of pornography. So it's like you don't know in that one. You know who Norman Bates is. Like he basically wears his disgusting habits on his sleeve. But in Psycho, it's hinted at that it's hidden, but you never really find out. And I thought that was really interesting that they didn't show it to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that worked out really well, and I think that was a really wise decision, because when you first see Norman Bates, whether you know who he is in the movie or not, you don't take him for a killer, or a psycho, so to speak, right away. He looks like a really upstanding gentleman. He looks respectful. I mean, it's too good to be true, but had they had the middle-aged, older version, guy stand there, you instantly go, I'm not staying at this hotel.
Oh, definitely. He's definitely got this like Mr. Rogers kind of vibe to him.
What do you mean there's porn on free porn on the station? This guy's a sicko. Yeah, but yeah, you called it the Mr. Rogers version is much more effective.
Definitely. And I feel like that choice really made this Hitchcock's like own creation. It's like you got to give the book like its own due, but overall Hitchcock is, in my opinion, just as much an owner of Psycho as the guy who originally wrote it. I can't remember what his name is, but
I think it was like Robert Bloch.
something like that. Yeah, really good writer, but yeah. Actually, there's a
Um,
second and a third Psycho book, but they're not very good.
I was gonna say, so back in the day, the value of a dollar is really different, right? So Hitchcock, he bought the rights to the story for $9,000. Which, man, if I wrote a story and somebody paid me $9,000, I'd be on cloud nine. But taking that out of context, he bought the rights for $9,000 and he deferred his salary and decided to collect on the back half of the making of the film, right, to see how the proceeds did and everything. And yeah, Hitchcock made over $150 million off Psycho instead of a $250,000 salary. I think that he made the right decision.
Yeah, I'd say so. I kind of feel bad for the author because I wouldn't say he got chipped, but like, yeah, he's not seeing even close to that amount of money.
Yeah, well, as writers, that's the thing that people face, and at least he wrote a book good enough. It inspired Alfred Hitchcock's most famous movie of all time, and who knows, maybe behind the scenes, maybe he was getting to be on set, or maybe after everything, he had a cigar with Hitchcock and they went to dinner and it was a beautiful friendship. Who really knows? But yeah, I mean, it could always be the other way. He goes crazy pulling his hair out trying to write the next book, the next Alfred Hitchcock picture, and it doesn't happen.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why he wrote Psycho 2 and 3, because I think it was because after the film came out, it's like, okay, a lot of people are going to buy this, so I'm going to write these books, and they're really not that great. The second one really does. Actually, neither of them really have Norman Bates in them much at all. So it's I get the decisions they made. He wanted to make it different, but it wasn't like it. I mean, there's a Psycho 2, 3, and 4, I think, of the movies.
Yep.
The second and third actually aren't as bad as I thought they were going to be. I heard the fourth one was terrible, and I never even bothered to watch it. But yeah, I feel like it's like basically a cohesive story as it is, and neither one of them needs sequels.
Yeah, you are right. There are 4 movies before the remake, and number 4 is awful. But yeah, Psycho, it doesn't need a sequel. It stands alone on its own. It is a fantastic story. It was done really well. The cinematography is fantastic. All the twist turns, the plot points, the jump scares, the skeleton in the chair when you spin it around, the little spider that crawls over. I mean, it was all so well done. But I think the choice to do it in black and white really helped the tone of that film.
Oh, definitely.
Because he had already made color films, but he still went back and did black and white because I had read the theory behind it. People were like, maybe he knew that he would get away with the death scene, and that's really not it at all. He chose to film in black and white because he could make a cheaper film because everybody doubted the film. Everybody thought it was going to be a fluke, and he thought, okay, there are tons of B movie black and white films that did fairly well. You had 1954 Creature from the Black Lagoon blew up, right? So if he can make an inexpensive film and it turn around to be amazing, the profit will be fantastic. And so that's actually the reason he had chose to do it in black and white, was because he's like, if it flops, I didn't spend a lot. But if it's amazing, I'll get all this credibility. And boy, did he.
Oh, yeah. Definitely the smart financial decision on his part. And it worked out so well. Like, it just gives a vibe to the film that was perfect for the everything that went on.
Yeah, and I think that some modern directors have seen that, and that's why today, people look back at some of the older horror films as being very groundbreaking. But then, even when people make the decision to go ahead and film in black and white, it does so much for your movie. Off topic, but like Human Centipede Part 2, they shot that in color. Realized it wasn't creepy enough, and they turned around and reshot it in black and white, And man, it added so much more to the movie. So, back to Psycho, but job well done on that. I think it was a match made in heaven with the music score. I think I read that it was like the number 4 greatest, track in the was it AFI. That's
Something like
pretty
that, yeah.
awesome. Yeah, it was like number 4, and it was. I mean, there's no vocals, just all string, orchestra, and it's so catchy. It makes every Halloween CDs list every year, and I mean, this movie really did kind of kickstart slashers in a way.
Yeah, pretty much. This came out years before Black Christmas, which is also known as the first slasher film. So this predates that. So you could really say that Norman Bates was the first slasher protagonist.
Or Norman Bates' mother.
That's true.
But Anthony Perkins was so perfect for this. This scrawny little guy, the way his devious smile towards the camera, it was awesome. But another thing that stands out to me really is the car chase with the cop. I think we all feel that way. Like we're driving down the road, if we have a sticker that's out or a tail light that's out, or if we know that we're going too fast and we see a cop and the cop just so happens to turn around and you drive for like 2 miles, like, why is this cop still following me? Like, we all know how Marion Crane was feeling with that tension.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So did you pick up on the fact that there's a lot of bird references in this movie?
I actually didn't. That's I hadn't really noticed many of them.
Yeah, like some of the books that were being read were about birds, and he had stuffed birds in the little lobby area, and then her name is Marion Crane,
Ah,
and then his next feature film was The Birds.
I never.
I feel
Actually
like he
put
was
the
saying
two together,
something.
but
Oh my God, is that like the first Easter egg?
pretty much, yeah. Alfred Hitchcock really he made a lot of groundbreaking actions in this film. That's for sure.
So we both love the film,
I just want
but
to say one quick thing is about the shower scene. I looked this up just a little while ago, but apparently it was made using 77 different close-up angles and in 50 different cuts. And it was so well done because not only did the music, like you were saying, match like perfectly to that, thus making it the first like slasher theme song, like going way before like Jason and Michael Myers, but it was choosing to do a close-up thing like made it so much scarier than if they had zoomed out at all, because it worked so perfectly. It felt like so personal, especially zooming in and zooming back and forth between Marion Crane getting stabbed, and they never actually show the knife going into her. They just show like her reactions to it and the blood, and then it goes to Norman Bates as his mother stabbing, and it was what a brilliantly done scene. Like it's that scene is just, it deserves to be as infamous as it is, just because of how well done it is and the choices they made to make it as scary as it was.
yeah, I'm pretty sure people were running out of the theater back in 1960.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So if you had to rank this film, what would you give it?
Now we're talking about on a 1 to 10 scale?
Yeah, pretty much, just a normal scale.
About a 7.
Okay. I gave this a 9 out of 10. I have only really one complaint about this film, which
Here we go.
is, okay, at the very end of the film, when they're explaining Norman's psychosis, it's this big info dump where they're like, well, you see, he thinks that he's his mother because this and this. I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, it's good to explain that because especially at the time, like, a lot of people didn't have a working understanding of schizophrenia. But it seemed like such an info dump, and it's like I'd rather them show it than like just tell the whole thing. And I really felt that could have been done better. But at the same point, the very last scene in the film is Alfred as Norman sitting there, basically, and he's thinking to himself in his mother's voice, and it's so creepy. And just hearing the explanation of this psychosis, like right before that, worked really well. He's just saying like, I'm just an innocent old lady, see that fly, I'm not even gonna swat that fly. And it's such a great scene. But like the preceding info dump, like I hate when films do that. And I understand I gotta put myself in the time period, and I don't really know if I could have done any better, but it's just something that always bugged me about the film. It's not something to ruin it, and it definitely doesn't detract from the overall, but I had to mention the info dump. It always bugs me every time I watch the film.
I don't think I've heard that term before, but I'm gonna start using it now. I got to go get an info dump.
Yeah, whenever movies, when they just like blatantly explain the plot, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, I could have probably figured that out, but thanks, guys. Like, it's like this. I call it an info dump, and it's just I hate when movies do that, because most of the time, I don't think Psycho's guilty of this, but most of the time when it happens, it's a sign that the writer isn't confident that what they showed was enough to express what they were trying to get across to the audience. So it just makes them seem either really unconfident, or makes them think the kind of makes the audience feel like they're too dumb to get it. So, but overall, I don't think that's what Hitchcock was doing. But I think that looking at it from this time period, where I've seen so many things like that, it just bugs the crap out of me.
All you gotta do is hit the mute button.
That's true.
Make it a silent film.
Oh yeah. So a 7 out of 10 by you and a 9 out of 10 by me. Alright, so since this is the end of Alfred Hitchcock Month, that means it's time to rank our top 5 Hitchcock films. Now, the top 5 films that we pick don't necessarily have to be from the movies that we reviewed. In fact, I think a good portion of them aren't. Plus, there are 5 of them, so it's pretty much impossible. So, would you like to go first with your list?
Sure. Now, do you want me to list all 5, or do you want to just take turns one by one?
Yeah, let's go one by one. Like, you pick one, and then like explain your reasoning for it. Then I'll go with mine.
All right. So, Phantom Dark Dave, number 5, The Birds. Not sure if it made your list, but for me, kind of bummed we chose not to review it, because I rewatched it and forgot how much I liked it. I never thought pigeons would be so creepy.
Actually, what's funny about that, for number 5, I also have The Birds.
That's perfect.
I first saw the movie like 20 years ago, and it scared the shit out of me. Just the concept of birds like turning against human beings is terrifying, and I've watched it since then, and it still scares the crap out of me. It's a great film, though it made me forever distrust birds. Those feathered bastards.
Yeah, and I mean, the phone booth scene and everything was so... I mean, we talked many times about how Alfred Hitchcock makes the scenes in movies, and there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
And you got the little girl getting knocked down by the bird. You're just like, what the hell is wrong with these birds?
Oh, yeah. It's such a well-done film. Like, it's... it's truly a scary, scary experience.
All right. You ready for number 4?
Oh, yeah.
This may piss a lot of people off. Number 4, Psycho. I like the movie. I do. But the way my mind works, right, the way I'm wired, other movies have to stand out, because I like the Psycho storyline. It's definitely creative, but it was very... there's so many other Hitchcock movies where I'm just looped into the relationship of other characters, and Psycho was definitely good enough to make my top 5, but I think when you hear my other 3, you'll understand.
Very cool. I picked for number 4, Vertigo. It's a really well-told mystery thriller with a great twist, and Jimmy Stewart was pretty much at his best in that one. I really liked the film. I had some problems with it, but it was a little slow-paced, and some of the actions by Jimmy Stewart were kind of weird, especially his interactions with his love interest, but overall, it's a solid film. It's really well worth watching.
All right. So for me, number 3, Vertigo. I agree with you, but I just took so much more interest in this one than Psycho. Maybe I'm a Jimmy Stewart buff, but he did such a great job. And I think because I had read so much negativity about the movie, and then I watched it and was like, I didn't see any of that negativity. Now, again, this top five is a personal choice top five. This isn't ranking Alfred Hitchcock on his best five, but for me personally, Vertigo hits home at number three. I love the story. I'm like, what a cool concept, what a cool idea. The scenery is awesome. Love that bell tower, and like I said, the lead actress in this movie stole me, and the relationship between her and Jimmy Stewart just took presence.
Definitely. For number three, I picked another one that wasn't on our reviews, but I still really like Strangers on a Train. It's a story about two men who meet on a train and agree to murder someone for the other person. And I really thought it captured the complexities of the human mind, like realistically how a person would react if they were going to murder somebody. And it was kind of like when we reviewed Rope. You've got one guy who's the normal kind of guy who reacts appropriately to the topic of murder, and one guy who just doesn't see anything wrong with it, and just the idea of like meeting somebody who's very well spoken, very charming, who's also a psychopath. I thought it was so well done, and when they both kind of take different paths in the murder deal, and just how the other guy reacts, it's like a complete like difference in morality, like a complete not understanding of the other person, and I thought it was done really well. It's a very good film, and I wouldn't say it's one of his most underrated films because it does get a lot of attention, but I think that one really captures captures Alfred Hitchcock's understanding of that we're only. I think that what that one really shows is half the time when we do things, it's only because we've told ourselves certain things are wrong. But if we never did or can't understand why, maybe we wouldn't be so against certain actions.
Nicely said, my friend. Yeah, no, it definitely, it's definitely a good one. Rolling in at number two for me, a film we did not talk about, Dial M for Murder.
Ah, there you go.
I love this movie. This movie was awesome. It reminded me so much of another film called Rope that you mentioned. You got a few characters, one setting, and fantastic story. And basically, Ray Milland is in this movie, and he is married to Grace Kelly. And Grace Kelly is not a good wife in his opinion, and he thinks she needs to be murdered, and I need to be free from this. So he ends up getting in touch with an old friend of his who he knows has kind of a dirty background and offers to pay him to kill his wife. And everything seems okay until things don't go as expected, and the hired murderer gets murdered. And then after that, everything starts to unfold, the murder in your face, and you just get so much Hitchcock in this movie. And I was blown away by the performances from all the actors and actresses. I loved the way that everything was so like detective story in this, and even though you know what happened because you saw it on screen, for a second you pretended you didn't because you loved having to find out what was going on. And I wasn't so sure that Dial M for Murder had its place on my list, and after I rewatched it just for this purpose, I couldn't believe it, but it made it all the way to number two.
Very cool. Yeah, that one almost made the list, but when I was marking down all the positives of all the Hitchcock films I've seen, it just barely missed it, right under Birds. But for number two, I picked Rope. It's an intense, underrated crime thriller, and it's set in a limited location, and it's so well done. The character of I think it was Philip, who and was just so well done, like as a psychopath who he's just so calm about killing somebody, and it's a game to him the whole time. And he's at it takes place at this dinner party, and he's just, well, you'd have to watch our review of that, but yeah, just the way he acts around it, and Jimmy Stewart's character was amazing as well. What a great film. It is unbelievable. But that was my number 2 pick.
That's not a bad choice. Do you want to guess what my number 1 is?
Let's see. Was it Lifeboat?
No, not Lifeboat, not 39 Steps, not Notorious by far.
Oh, it's North by Northwest, right?
It is definitely not North by Northwest. In fact, I am amazed that Cary Grant did not make my top 5 Alfred Hitchcock list. But everybody who listens to me knows that for me, number 1, Rope. Everything Paul just said, plus a million things that I love about this movie. The entire atmosphere, the acting is flawless, and I felt like I was in the living room at this dinner party the whole time this movie was going on. And secretly, I almost wanted to be, right? I'm like, this is crazy. This is all happening right in front of us. But yeah, I think as far as the story goes, even though it was about the most basic thing you can do, it was almost like watching Clue, the game unfold on film. And with just 15 takes, it stole my heart. Number 1, Rope.
Very cool. So for number 1, I didn't want to be this guy, but I'm going to be that guy. I picked Psycho. And my reason for it is I just think this one is the most Hitchcock of all of his films. To me, Hitchcock was a guy who could pretty much see through anyone. He could see what could break people and how really fragile people are and how in the right circumstances we can all be broken. And I think with the character of Norman Bates, a guy who comes off as pretty normal, quite charming, and Anthony Perkins, who played it perfectly, he would just break at times and just completely break from reality. He would start yelling at himself as thinking he was in an argument with his mother. He would think he was her, and just to build such a broken character but make him so human, especially for the time in the 1960s, was such a brilliant achievement. I know it was based off a book, but my God, Hitchcock made that his own, and I definitely understand why it's his most well-known film. I have even the fact that like this also very much influenced a lot of the slasher films which come later. The idea of just making such a broken character who could just viciously murder people and from being completely removed from reality was so well done. The casting was great, the music was great, and like I said, except for the info dump at the end, which I think is just me putting my own kind of bias from the time period I'm into that, I really can't find many flaws in it. It's based on and my God, I love that film. It's something else, and to me, it is the most Hitchcock of them all.
No flaws except for an info dump.
Pretty much, yeah.
So whether it's a rope or a knife, somebody's getting killed in a Hitchcock film.
Oh yeah. I do have to say, for most of our picks, it was about people murdering others. What does it say about us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have a contract out for anybody. I hope I haven't made anybody agitated. But I saw a pattern with Hitchcock there.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Like, you look at, let's see, Rope. I know I picked Stranger on a Train. You picked Dial M for Murder. A lot of them, well, even Vertigo too, and obviously Psycho. They all have to do with like somebody getting murdered or a murder plot. Like they're definitely not family friendly films. That's for sure. But yeah, I love them all the more.
So that does conclude Hitchcock. Do you want to let them know who the next director showcase is going to be?
Yes. Next month is going to be a fun one. For the month of April, we will be reviewing films by Todd Browning.
And for those of you who know, Todd Browning covers silent films, and talkie films, so you might see a healthy mix.
Oh yeah. Do you have a choice for our first review for next week?
I don't know, because when I think of Todd Browning, two really big movies come to mind, and I feel like we should start with one and we should end with one. So I will say, between Freaks and Dracula, how would you like to start?
I'd say let's start with Dracula because that's the film that really got his career going, and then let's end with Freaks because that's the one that unfortunately destroyed his career. But that's
So
another story entirely.
you want to start a top five with a movie that launched his career, and you want to end a top five with a movie that destroyed his career. I think that is so poetic. Let's do it.
Sounds good to me. All right, B-movie fans. So until next time, be brave, be alive, and be back for more.
Yaramanı. Hapsi yıldır o.